Well, good morning. I'm very pleased to be here at City Hall this morning, joined by City Manager Chris Murray. And I don't get a chance to say this half often enough. I do sometimes in meetings I'm not sure people are necessarily paying attention to. But, you know, we have been so blessed through this pandemic and other chapters. I mean, we're blessed every day, but blessed through the pandemic, including even the recent chapters with respect to some of these protest activities by great, strong leadership that we have in our city manager, Chris Murray, who's with us today, our police chief, and the list goes on. And it's been so helpful that we functioned well as a team, and that we continue to function well as a team, and that we can take advantage of each other's strengths to get things done for the people of the city. And so Chris is here today because some of what I'll go through, there may be some very detailed questions you want to ask him about with respect to the planned return to work and so on. But he's here, and I just want to acknowledge not only his presence, but also the contribution he makes every day to the city being as well run as I believe it is. I am really excited to be able to make today's announcement. You know, we went down this road a little bit before Omicron hit us, and I think it hit everybody in the world unexpectedly. But today's announcement is another sign. They're all small incremental signs that we're moving forward in a steady fashion to get to the end of the pandemic. And, you know, we're not going to end it, but we're going to, you know, learn to adjust to it and to live with it, as Dr. Davila has said. News from the provincial government on Monday further solidifies these cautiously optimistic plans and gives us the confidence that we need to reopen as a city and to welcome more people back to work in person and back to offices. And I hope that that example that we are going to set is one that is going to be followed as well by others who can have people come back to work on some satisfactory basis, and certainly in a safe manner. Today, we are announcing that the City of Toronto will begin the safe and gradual reopening of city buildings to visitors starting next week. City Hall, North York Civic Centre, Scarborough Civic Centre, Etobicoke Civic Centre, York Civic Centre, and East York Civic Centre will be welcoming people back for in-person counter services starting next Tuesday, the day after Family Day. This means that residents will be able to head to City Hall or to one of these civic centres to pay their property taxes and utilities and parking violations, to apply for construction permits, to apply for a tree permit, to pick up COVID-19 rapid screening kits that are to be made available to small and medium-sized businesses, just to name some examples. And while some of these services will require booking an appointment in advance, others will operate on a first-come, first-served basis. Visitors will be welcomed, and this is a bit different than the normal routine you might have been used to before the pandemic, if you can remember that far back. Visitors will be welcomed by greeters who will assist with wayfinding and answer questions because there are various things that have been done to keep these buildings safe and healthy for everybody, but they will be open nonetheless. Throughout the pandemic, thousands of City of Toronto employees have been on the front lines and reporting to workplaces across the city every day and every night. These are the people that have made sure that the frontline services that you are accustomed to and you can expect as taxpayers have been delivered to you virtually without interruption. Around 20% of our employees who work in city office buildings, including City Hall, have been working largely remotely from home during the pandemic, like many other office workers in other lines of work. With the province lifting their work from home restriction, we are now restarting our return to office plan that had to be postponed and interrupted by the Omicron surge that happened earlier on. Starting next week, office staff who want to work in the office will be able to return, and they'll be welcome to return. All office spaces will be open to maximum capacity within provincial health rules. A full return to office will be in place starting March 21st, and all city facilities will be open to the public again starting on that day. Full details will be communicated to city employees today and in the days ahead. Our city staff are working right now, as they have been for some time, to ensure that all office spaces are as safe as they can possibly be, certainly in compliance as well with all of the rules. This is something that all employers are doing across the city and across the province, and I support this work as we all look to move forward safely. This work that is being done in our different city work locations includes ensuring proper physical distancing, ensuring the universal wearing of masks, increased sanitization and enhanced cleaning protocols, reduction of common touch points, improved ventilation in buildings, mandatory daily screening, and mandatory vaccinations for all staff. Starting March 21st, City Council and committee meetings will begin the transition to a hybrid model, which will allow for members of Council to attend meetings either virtually, as we have been doing, or in person. Further details on reopening and hours of opening can be found at toronto.ca. We're also announcing that beginning today, residents can explore the spring recreational program offering that will be available at city facilities. We are bringing back a full suite of programs, workshops, activities for spring that will be available across the city. More than 8,400 registered courses with approximately 68,000 spaces will be offered, including arts, fitness and wellness, general interest, sports, and swimming. Virtual recreation workshops will also be available. We are also offering some new programs for spring, including outdoor Pilates, outdoor Tai Chi, outdoor yoga, and a new soccer curriculum. Registration for spring recreational programs will begin on Saturday, March the 5th for Etobicoke, York, and Scarborough, and Monday, March the 7th for North York, Toronto, and East York, and for virtual recreation programs. Programs will begin the week of April 4th, 2022. Today's announcement gives families the time they need to look at the roster of programs, to plan, to pick the programs they want, and of course to register on the days that are provided for. Information on all of these programs can be found at toronto.ca//springrec. The quickest and easiest way to register for recreation programs is online. A registration by phone will also be available starting at 7 a.m. on the registration dates that were mentioned for the different parts of the city. Again, these details to be found at toronto.ca. 5 community centre locations will also be open from 7 a.m. to noon for in-person registration support. They include Saturday, March the 5th for the Centennial Recreation Centre in Scarborough and the Driftwood Community Recreation Centre in Etobicoke, York, and Monday, March 7th, the Wellesley Community Centre for Toronto East York, the Dennis R. Timbrell Resource Centre for North York, and the Mary McCormick RC Recreation Centre in Toronto East York. Our Parks and Recreation and Forestry Call Centre will be open for extended hours on Thursday, March the 3rd and Friday, March the 4th from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. to make sure that everybody who needs help will get help. They can be reached at 416-396-7378. That's 416-396-7378. And again, all of this information can be found at toronto.ca. We've also opened up registration for in-person and virtual March Break Camp TO for children aged 4 to 12 years old. Spaces are still available and camps will start on March the 14th. Visit toronto.ca/camps for more information on how to learn more about these camps and how to register for the remaining spaces. We know that all of these programs provide a solid foundation for so many kids in our city, and we're proud to provide them right across the City of Toronto. We believe that recreational activities is something that should be available to anyone and to everyone. And accordingly, if any family feels they're unable to participate due to the cost this year, those receiving Ontario Works Assistance and living in Toronto are pre-approved to receive the Welcome Policy yearly credit, which they can then apply against the registration fees otherwise payable for these programs. In addition, participants 60 years and older receive a 50% discount on the regular price of adult recreational programs, excluding private, semi-private, and small group lessons. I want to reassure parents that we are doing everything possible to make these programs as safe as they possibly can be in light of the experiences we've had with the COVID pandemic. A number of health measures will be in place at community recreation centres to ensure that everyone can be safe and that these programs can stay open and can operate. City staff are working now with Toronto Public Health to review whether proof of vaccination requirements should stay in place in these facilities. They will share those details as soon as they have concluded those discussions. I want to thank community recreation staff who have done so much this year and in fact for this past couple of years to adjust programs so that we could keep in place as many programs as we possibly could in light of extraordinary public health requirements. If you look at the number of programs we've actually been able to continue to offer during an extraordinary pandemic, it is thanks to their hard work in being nimble to move quickly when a lot of these waves and so on came upon us, and provincial rules and the like. And I know that they have worked hard to get this done, and that Torontonians, including me as the mayor, appreciate this work very, very much. So both of these announcements about the reopening of workplaces and the reopening of services for in-person attendance by the members of the public and the return to work by our city staff, these are both pieces of good news. It means that we are opening things up and we are ready to welcome people back. We're doing it in that cautious, steady way, but steady nonetheless, that we have done things throughout the pandemic, and I think that that means of doing things have served us well. I know that some people may feel this is a bit of deja vu, that we've made these announcements before and had to pause them or interrupt them, and that is true. Every decision we've made every single time has been based on public health advice and what we believe to be in the broader public interest, in the interest of the safety and well-being of everybody in the public and our own employees. But I will say to you that had Omicron not struck, then city offices would be open right now. But I believe that we are now on the other side of this pandemic, and I share Dr. Davila's cautious optimism. My own is guided very much by hers as our expert that has done so well to help us through this pandemic, and I sincerely believe that brighter days are ahead and that we can proceed on that basis, that kind of an assumption. Make no mistake, we are making it through this pandemic and the Omicron surge thanks to all of those, including 100% of City of Toronto employees who have been vaccinated. And you notice my choice of words. We are making it through the pandemic, and we have work left to do, and we have to stay the course on what we've been doing in that steady way to get ourselves to the point where we've returned to a life that is more like normal. We weathered the Omicron surge because 62%, more than 62% of eligible Toronto residents got their third dose as soon as they possibly could. But as you've heard me mention before, the 62% number is a huge achievement. Thanks to you, and thanks to the efforts that our Team Toronto has made, including the leadership of Councillor Cressy and Dr. Davila. But 62% is only 62%, and we are not giving up, and we are not relenting on our efforts to go, if necessary, one by one. But I will tell you that, just checking my numbers here so I do it right, but just yesterday at the city and mobile clinics we had across the city, 2,700 people got vaccinations. That's a far cry from the numbers we were, putting on the board earlier on, but it is still a significant number of people, 2,700 who, thanks to our outreach, thanks to our efforts, and thanks to their own motivation in their families and so on, went and got a vaccination yesterday. And that's the work we're doing day after day. And I want to thank again the residents of Toronto who are stepping up, and I particularly want to thank the members of Team Toronto who have been just so dedicated in the work they do every day of the week. I go to these clinics no matter what day I pick. Of course, the staff are there, and they're people who are just doing wonderful service, acting professionally, comforting people, reassuring people, and making sure that they get vaccinated. Our 5 city-run clinics continue to be open for walk-ins right now. For anyone who needs a COVID-19 vaccine, including adults eligible for third doses, and including, as we announced yesterday, those aged 12 to 17 who are eligible for a third dose, which means you had your second dose more than 6 months ago. We can now move forward, and we will continue to move forward because of these efforts, and we will continue to move forward. I am absolutely determined to see us do that. Our leadership team is the same. I am working with people in the business community and elsewhere to make sure that, in fact, one of the things that I know is important to you occurs, which is that Toronto comes back from this in every respect, economically, socially, and in terms of our confidence levels, stronger than ever. People are watching what goes on here because they've seen how well we've come through the pandemic in relative terms. They've seen that we've remained united. You don't achieve a 90% vaccination level without a unity in the city that is extraordinary. And again, I thank you for that. But people are watching for that, and they want to see us just as unified in the task of reopening the city and recovering the city so that we can get back to being the kind of powerhouse that we are and will be again, and taking the fruits of that success and sharing it with those who need just a bit of a hand up to make sure they too can share in that success. So I very much look forward. I'm enthused, almost to the point where I want to go down and stand at the front door to welcome people back to the City Hall. It's been strange working here without other people in the building, including in particular the people that we serve. The hustle and bustle of our downtown is something that I miss. And, if I miss it, and many of you miss it too, you can imagine how the business people feel that have invested, in many cases, their life savings and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in building businesses that have been devastated by the fact that the downtown has been largely abandoned during the course of the pandemic. We need the downtown to be filled with people again, for a whole bunch of reasons, including just the quality of life and the humanity of this important part of our city in which live hundreds of thousands of people and many more who work here every single day. And we need it to be alive. We need it for the sake of our economy as well and for the sake of the national economy, given, as much as some of my friends around the rest of the country don't like to hear it, Toronto is the economic engine for this entire country. And we're proud of that, and we want to continue in that role, and we want to contribute to the well-being of this entire country. Toronto is meant to be a city that is filled with people across the board, in every place, our cultural places, our recreational places, our parks, our streets, our sidewalks. We want people everywhere, offices, and so on. And we're working to get to that place with your cooperation. We have a vibrant and thriving downtown core. It is alive like no other downtown, probably anywhere else in North America. And this is a step in the right direction to bring it back to where it needs to be and to bring it back to where it's going to be a fun place to be, an alive place to be, a safe place to be, a prosperous place to be. And it will benefit, in so being, all of those things, the city, but it will benefit the entire country. And I think right now we need to do things, including that, to bring this country together, to bring the city together, although the city, based on some of these vaccination efforts, is pretty together. I just hope it stays that way. So again, Chris is here. If you have detailed questions about the exact parameters of the return to work, I'm here to answer any questions on this or anything else you want to ask me about. So over to Lavin for the questions.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll now take questions from the media. As a reminder, it's one question, one follow-up, and we'll unmute you when it's your turn. First up, we have Adrienne Williams from Radio Canada. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Of course, my question is for Mayor Tory. New data published by the Toronto Region Board of Trade shows that in-person consumer spending has declined in most business districts, especially in the metropolitan center, where spending is 44% below 2019 levels. What is your reaction to these findings, and are you hopeful that the reopening will give downtown Toronto the help it needs?
Well, my reaction is one of great concern but not surprise. I was in the underground yesterday, and when I was there, if I passed 4 people in a place where you might normally literally pass hundreds of people, and that was in the middle of the week in the heart of downtown. I know the place where I go to get my haircut, for example, are seeing a dramatically reduced percentage of people coming in because people aren't going to come, to get a haircut who aren't downtown. They're not going to go to the food court if they're not downtown. So by showing the leadership we are showing by bringing people back to work, and we're doing it in a sensitive, careful way, we're doing it in consultation with our employees, but we are bringing people back. We are reopening our buildings so that people will come to these buildings as they wish for in-person service. And by doing that, I will also be meeting with the employers again, as I've done on a regular basis, to encourage them to follow the lead that we had established earlier in the year but had to postpone because of Omicron. And I think that next week I'll have more to say about some supports that are being offered through the efforts of all the different governments for businesses to help them get back on their feet. And we have some things we're going to be doing to try to make it not just possible for them to reopen because people are back downtown, but also to reopen with some support and some encouragement and some awareness building of the fact that they're back. And I'd say, by the way, it doesn't just apply to downtown. I focused on that because that's the area, as the Board of Trade points out, that's been hardest hit. But it's going to apply to main streets across the city that are such an important part of the lifeblood of healthy neighborhoods. And so we'll have more to say about that next week. And I'm very concerned and very devoted to addressing that as I'm spending quite a bit of my time on that, in addition to the other things that we have going.
Follow-up?
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up?
Yep,
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I was going to ask about the concrete measures that you're going to be taking. I don't know if you can be more precise before tomorrow, but other than that, you said you would give more information next week. I don't know if you can give more information now, but other than that, are you worried that maybe people's behaviors have changed during the pandemic, and are you worried that that will persist in the future and will give you maybe trouble with convincing people to come back downtown?
It's a challenge because I think people's behaviors change over the course of time in any event, and then when you have a huge event like this, which was such a jarring event for so long, like a pandemic, it's going to bring about more changes. And I don't think there's any doubt but that it will affect the way people work to some extent because of the fact it's been proven that you can work away from home some of the time. But I believe from listening to our own employees, from listening to the employers and employees of other private sector concerns in the city, a lot of people want to come back to work. As much as they had some joy at some stages in having the convenience of working from home, lots of people want to have the collegiality of being with their fellow workers. They like the idea they can get advice. Some of the coaching and mentoring that goes on in an office in person is really important to people's career developments, and there are business benefits to that for the companies involved. So I think we will find people will come back to work. I think what we have to make sure of is that it happens, on a gradual basis that will be decided upon by each individual employer and employee, but that it happens over time because the health of the downtown of our city and the health of these main streets depends on it. I think we can also help by, as I've said many times, shopping local, dining local, taking out local, and supporting smaller businesses that have been hurt more than some of the bigger businesses have. But I'm determined to see the city get back to the state of health it was in prior to the pandemic. I think we can. You've heard me say before, all the right stuff that was in this city that made it a powerhouse in global terms before the pandemic hit, the smart people, the respect we have for each other, the way of life, the critical mass of different industries that we have here, all of those things are still here. And it is still a magnet for people from around the world to come to this city and to be part of a unified city that tries to steer ourselves well away from the kind of division we've seen going on in too many places in the world. And that's the kind of thing we're going to offer to people again. I think they will come. I think people will come back downtown because it's an exciting, great place to be. And we're just going to have to work away at that. I will do that relentlessly because it's the next challenge we have in front of us as the pandemic hopefully recedes into the background.
Thank you. Next up, we have Francine Copen from the Star. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, good morning. How is everyone?
We're all good. I hope you're as well.
Yes, thank you. Mayor Tory, my question is this. Council meetings will resume starting March 21st, but a kind of hybrid, so councilors will be able to attend in person or virtually. I'm wondering if the same is being offered to employees. As of March 21st, will they be able to choose between working virtually or in person, or do they all have to be working in person?
I'll let Chris answer that. I know the answer, but his will be better than mine. So here we go.
Okay, thank you.
So Francine, thank you very much for that question. And certainly, as the mayor points out, it was really important for us to give all of our staff that work in the office at least a month's notice in terms of an important date. We are going to be working with management and all of our frontline staff that attend all of our municipal buildings on what's going to basically balance the needs of management as well as the individual needs themselves. So we know that there are a number of people that are going to have to make arrangements, whether it be elder care or child care. So we're quite sensitive to that. We're very sensitive as well to the public health measures that are going to remain in place, which will affect some of the capacity of our buildings. But again, the approach is going to be one where, yes, we do have an expectation that people will work from the office, and that there will be some opportunity certainly to work from home over a period of time. But I just want to point out a couple of things I think are really important. We're not quite there yet, but it's almost spring. I have a lot of staff that I know will work 5 days a week in the office and are really kind of chafing at the bit to get back to the office. In terms of the downtown and the vibrancy, it is important for staff to see each other. The socialization, the mental health benefits of that, I think, are fairly significant. As well, to support our businesses in our downtown and our Main Street areas, I think, as the mayor has well said, how important that is to the vibrancy of this community. So it is very much a measured approach. And to the mayor's point about, we've been down this road before. If something happens that we'll have to pull the reins back a bit and reposition what we're going to do, that will happen. But we're not at this point seeing that as a likely outcome. So really important that we give adequate notice to our staff. And again, I just want to emphasize about 80% of our organization has been working tirelessly through this whole pandemic. They've been on the streets, they've been picking up garbage, they've been plowing snow, some of that contracted work that's happened, as well as all the other services that we deliver. So this is a very stepwise, measured approach. to support our staff, to support the objectives of management, certainly, but more importantly, or as importantly, the objectives of this community and those businesses that are waiting for us to come through their door. And I'll just say this, Mayor Tory, I have a 24-year-old daughter that lives downtown, and she's downtown for a reason. I think there's a whole group of people that are just waiting for the better weather to come and to visit the restaurants and the bars and do all the things that add to their quality of life. And so I don't see our employees any different. We have all age groups that work for us. And I'll end with this. It's fundamentally important to me as the city manager to retain phenomenal staff and to attract phenomenal staff. And we know that the flexible working matter is important to people. But also important that we take advantage of the space that we have here at City Hall, Metro Hall, and all these other buildings. And so this will be very much a measured approach. And but like I say, I think there's many people waiting to get back.
I would rarely modify anything the city manager said, but I will say he said that a lot of the young people, including his daughter, might be waiting for the better weather to patronize the restaurants downtown. I hope they don't wait. The restaurants will return soon to 100% capacity, and while we want people to be careful, we want them to go and support those businesses. They've been so hard hit and they've been through so much. I've talked to many of them, and I think people out there know that, and so I hope they will, as soon as possible and in a careful way, go and patronize those people, whether it's in person or for takeout. It doesn't matter. It just supports those businesses that have been so hard hit. Next question.
So just to be crystal clear then, so it sounds like the city is expecting its employees to be back in the office on March 21st, but it's open to some accommodations as needed or required.
Chris will reach out and grab me by the coat here if I'm wrong, but we had said earlier in this year when we were planning to bring people back that we would have an expectation from the beginning that people would be here, at least 3 days a week. And we're happy if they're here every day, but we want people to come to work, and we want them to be here to serve the public. We want them to be here to learn from each other and to work with each other. But we would have that expectation that opening the office means people will be back at work at least that kind of period of time each week. Do you want to add to that or contradict it?
Well, and again, a lot of it depends on the capacity of our buildings, and I think absolutely we want, starting the 21st, people to attend our office spaces. For some, it could very well be 3 days a week. It likely will be more for some. Others, because of accommodating the kinds of concerns that they have, whether it be, as we say, elder care, child care, or other accommodations that are going to be important to them. We want to understand what those issues are. That's why management will be working with them over the coming days and weeks to understand what the special circumstances might be. But when you develop a hybrid working model for any kind of office space, I mean, the understanding is that you are spending time in the office. It's never a 100% work from home kind of arrangement. So we will, because there will be some people that will have important needs that we are going to have to understand and listen to and respect. And but by and large, I mean, there's no question about it. We are looking for people to return to the office for all the reasons I think the mayor has pointed out, and hopefully I've pointed out as clearly as we can.
Thank you, Francine. Next up, we have Beatrice Vaisman from CP24. Go ahead.
Morning, Mayor. My question is about proof of vaccination. You mentioned this is something that Toronto Public Health is currently still looking at, but are you suggesting it's a possibility that, for example, someone won't have to show proof of vaccination to go to a gym, but will have to show one to come swimming at one of the rec facilities in the city?
Well, your question illustrates precisely why this is a complicated area and why, again, we have to base it on the best advice we can get from our public health officials, Dr. Davila and her team, as opposed to, me or anybody else trying to sort of say, well, it makes sense here and not there. So what we'll try and do is something that obviously and most importantly is consistent with good public health, but we'll also try and do something that is easily understood by the public. One of the things that we've learned, I think, through the course of the pandemic is the clearer we can be, the simpler the rules are, so there aren't apparent contradictions in the way things are set up, the better it's going to be for the public to comply, which I think they want to do. And we're just being careful in reviewing the provincial decision with respect to vaccine passports and deciding how it applies to our recreational and other kinds of programs. And we will, as soon as we have that sorted out, we will share that with you and with the public.
Follow-up?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. My follow-up, you mentioned 100% of city employees are vaccinated. That's because of the policy in place, and the city had to lay off nearly 500 of its employees at the start of the year. Now that the rules are kind of being relaxed and the vaccine passports largely are going by the wayside next month, by mid-month, is there a reconsideration to this policy coming in the near future when it comes to requiring city staff to be fully immunized?
Well, no, there's no reconsideration of a policy that was immensely successful. Again, the very fact that we're able to point together to 100% of city employees being vaccinated, thereby keeping each other safe as they return to work and keeping members of the public who they interact with safe, I think is a badge of great accomplishment. And I'm sorry, there were people who made a choice that affected their employment with the city, but that was their choice. And they understood clearly from the beginning what the consequences were, but we felt very strongly, all of us here, that to have people vaccinated who serve the public in this manner and who work with each other was the best thing we could do to keep people safe, including right here in this place of employment. And so now what is required is a reconsideration of what you do going forward, recognizing that both some of the rules have changed, but also that there are going to be people hired on and so on as time goes on. But those are the kinds of things right now that the people in both our labor relations and our public health departments are looking at. And but until such time as there's any change announced to that policy remains in effect.
Okay, that was the last question. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you all.